This is Common Knowledge, a Magic the Gathering podcast about improving at the game with a focus on Pauper play. It's not about the cost, it's about the knowledge. Welcome to Common Knowledge. Here are your hosts, Brandon Clark and Lobbert. Enjoy this week's episode of Common Knowledge.
Before we get into anything, let's give a quick shout out to our wonderful sponsor, puremtgo.com. Check them out for great Magic content, articles, podcasts. You can find deck lists, all sorts of great stuff there. So check them out. A fan of the show, you can support us on patreon.com/commonknowledge. And don't forget to check out any of our other sister podcasts, or I don't know, our mother podcast, I think we decided that it was.
Yep.
The Constructed Criticism podcast, hosted by Spencer Howland. He's got some awesome co-hosts there. He's got a couple of silver level pros that co-host with him. Mm-hmm. Michael Hinderrocker, and then on limited time only, you can catch Spencer and Danny Cathro. So awesome content there. Check them out. So we've got an awesome show lined up for you today. We are still kind of restructuring things, still trying to work out what our vision is for this podcast to bring the best content possible for you guys. And I'm really excited about the structure that we have for this show and the content that we're going to be bringing to you guys. So let's kind of just jump right in with our first segment, our card of the week.
Our card of the week is Core Skyfisher. Core Skyfisher is a 2/3 with flying that when it enters the battlefield, you return any permanent you control back to its owner's hand, which is inevitably your hand. Why did you choose this card this week?
Well, I chose it, as we'll see later in our show on one of our other segments, because of the Boros Monarch deck that it's played in. But also, it just looks like it's just an interesting card, I think. It's got a lot of play in the format. It's got a lot of weird interactions, sort of unintuitive things that you can do with it that I just find really interesting. And I just want to talk about it.
Yeah, that second ability where it returns something to your hand, you can really turn that into whatever you want, as long as you bring like a buddy card along with it. You can have that say, gain 4 life, draw a card, really whatever. So let's go over some of the great interactions that we usually see with Core Skyfisher. I'll just go down this list real quick. We have 3-Bit Inspector, basically draw a card. Alchemist File, basically draw a card. Prophetic Prism, you're seeing a trend here. Journey to Nowhere. I think Journey to Nowhere is super, super interesting because you can get tokens and things, or you can have them try to save their creature, and it doesn't matter because you just bounce your Journey and then you can play it on another thing. So they can't get too tricky without you being even trickier. And just the 2/3 flyer just beats out everything in the air.
Yeah. So I included Journey to Nowhere in there because it's got, like you said, a lot of tricky interactions. There's a lot of token strategies in the format. Battle Screech, like opposing Battle Screeches and stuff. You can eat away a token, bounce it, get something else. But then there's also sort of this ability for you to use it early on what may be an insignificant creature just to get it off the board for a while. And then when you have enough of a board presence that creature doesn't matter, you bring back your Journey to Nowhere and then use it on a Gurmag Angler or something big, or, So I don't know. I thought it had some interesting interactions there. And so obviously going down this list, all these cards have enter the battlefield abilities. And so by bouncing them back to your hand and replaying them, you're just doubling up on all of these awesome abilities and just generating tons of virtual and real actual card advantage.
Yeah, on top of all of that, it combos with basic lands in that if you are going to miss a land drop, you can just bounce say like your planes, and then you get back that mana. So where a turn where maybe you would have only had to play, well, been able to play that Core Skyfisher or just a normal 2-drop, now you can squeeze in really either if you have a mountain, you can do a burn spell, or you can do something like that Thraben Inspector. And just the versatility of this card, I think makes, we've had this discussion where like, is this card the best white 2-drop? And then we just go back to Core Skyfisher and we're like, oh, well, Core Skyfisher.
Yeah, I think that this card is probably the best white 2-drop and one of the best white creatures in general in the format. So
yeah, and that butt on that card of just 3 toughness, you see it in Pestilence decks. It just comes up over and over.
Yeah, like it kills so many things. Like all the 1/1 creatures out of Delver. It eats Ninja of the Deep Hours. It trades with Delver, which, like, obviously you'd rather it eat the Delver, but like still trading with Delver is fine, especially when you've like already generated value out of it.
Yeah, and it's that flying where getting flying on a 2-drop with such a great body on it, it helps you keep that what's that broken effect where you draw a card every turn? Monarch,
yeah.
Yeah, it helps you keep that Monarch, blocks cards so that they don't get to play their Ninja. Love this card.
It's a very good. So anyway, that was our card of the week, Core Fisher. Core Sky Fisher. If you haven't had a chance to play with it, I recommend you do. It's a blast to play with.
Mm-hmm.
I really like generating incremental value off of cards and Core Sky Fisher.
It's not that
Core
hard.
Sky Fisher is one of the best ways to do that, to just accrue tons of incremental value over the course of a game. It's an awesome card. But anyway, let's jump into our main topic today. Today we're talking about Tron. Basically, what this deck is, how to play it, what cards make it up, and then, of course, we'll get into how to beat it later on. For those of you who don't want to play Tron but do want to beat it, because this deck is it's sort of a mainstay in the format. I mean, it's a big player.
Yeah, you get that. It's just is it bait, or is it? It's just that you know that you can get these powerful Tron lands to work, and so you have these payoff cards, and we'll get into the role it plays in the metagame, but it's like ever present. There's gonna, as long as those lands are legal, there's gonna be a good Tron deck.
Yeah, I agree. They're just way too powerful. But let's talk about what this deck is exactly.
So the deck, it basically is just trying to capitalize on that big mana that it can get from its lands. It doesn't have to eat up too many deck slots with ramp, so it functions as a control deck, and it just has this great late game. Yeah,
and it kind of does this weird thing where, like you said, it doesn't have to play all this ramp, and so it just jumps from, it almost skips mid game. It goes early game, late game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, there's no fiddling around trying to get yourself to that late game. There's no weird ramp spells trying to set you up.
Well, there's plenty of fiddling around. Like, if you've ever seen Tron work, it is kind of the first of the game is this push to get to the late game where you have all of your lands.
Yeah. But, I mean, it can get its lands by, like, turn 4.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this deck could be in the late game stages of...
Yeah, 8 mana.
It has 8 mana. So let's talk about some of the key components that make up this deck. The first one that we've sort of already started to touch on is the big mana. And that is coming from the Tron lands. And when we say Tron lands, we're talking about the cycle of Urza lands, Urza's Tower, Urza's Mine, and Urza's Power Plant. And when you assemble all 3 of them together, they create double mana in the cases of the mine and the tower, right? And then the power plant is the one that makes 3?
No, it's tower that makes 3.
Oh, the tower makes 3. Okay. Yeah, so the mine and the power plant will generate 2 generic mana, or colorless mana, and then the tower will generate 3 colorless mana. So you have 3 lands. Feasibly on turn 3, you could have 7 mana. This deck needs a lot more color, so you're not often having all 3 Tron lands by turn 3, but you can do it with some of the other fixers and enablers in the deck.
And luck. Everyone rues the turn 3 Tron. You know, that it happens. I wouldn't say too uncommonly. Most of the time, like when you sit down to play Tron, you're surprised how tough it is to actually, like, sometimes you're really struggling to get those lands together, but they're so great because they're hard to interact with. Once you got your thing going, you have to actually attack the lands, which isn't easy to do. No one does that in their main deck. And the things that they're using to go get those lands aren't threats, so you don't know whether to interact with those or not. It poses some really, just the Tron lands just pose really interesting questions. Next up, we have the mana fixers. We've lumped all of these in together. Some of them are lands and some of them are spells. We have Shimmering Grotto, which is a filter land. The gain lands, which enter tapped, but they're very much along the plan of get the colors you need, and entering tapped isn't too much of a hindrance that they're not worth playing. And then then you have Prophetic Prism and Expedition Map. Expedition Map can go find a color, and it can go find those Tron pieces. So most of these, pretty much all of them, except for maybe the gain lands, and they do in their own way, but they're all taxing effects on yourself, and it doesn't matter so much because you have so much mana later. And of course, that Expedition Map is basically a powerful ramp spell.
Yeah. Well, the Expedition Map is just great as a tutor, right? To go get whatever Tron piece you need. And then, you don't even have to go get a Tron piece. You can go and get a Shimmering Grotto or something and fix your mana.
Yeah, and I think Tron decks are, I don't know about famous, but I see them a lot of the time throwing in these one-of do-things lands where they can go and tutor for a cycling land or a Bojuka Bog, and they just have the option to go get that at instant speed when they need it. It doesn't enter at instant speed, but it's a land, so you can't interact with it.
Yeah, I think that's something that's sometimes overlooked, like you said, with the Expedition Map. Being able to effectively create a toolbox out of your mana base, so where you're not only generating all of this mana with your lands to do big things with your spells, but your lands themselves act as spell slots, which is I think that's a really powerful ability, a powerful tool that a deck can have, and not a lot of decks can do it. But Tron can.
It's usually the domain of control decks, and that's exactly what this is.
Yeah. So we've kind of talked about the big mana and the mana fixers, and what this deck wants to do once it builds up this Voltron of mana. Well, let's kind of chat a bit about some of the early game and interaction, some of the cards that are going to bridge us from early game to late game. We'll kind of just go down this list. So we've got some cheap interaction cards like Flame Slash and Electrostatic Bolt. And then we've got some cheap, efficient counterspells. So Prohibit, Exclude, Condescend all come to mind. Not Counterspell, though, right? The double blue is way too cost-intensive in this deck.
Yeah, but you have things with upside, like Exclude and Condescend. Condescend lets them interact on turn 2, counter your 2-drop, and helps them find that Tron piece again.
Yeah. So like they're all good in that they do more than just counter a spell. And like Exclude, that's like the poor man's cryptic command, right? Like counter your creature, draw a card. Great.
Yeah, but in Pauper it's the rich person's what do you call it? Remove soul. Rich at $1.50 or something.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that Condescend is this. It's one of those X mana spells where usually those fall off late game. Like the reason that Mana Leak isn't super great, it's a good card, but the reason it's not amazing, besides Tron exists, is that later on they're going to have that mana to pay for that spell. With Condescend, playing Tron lands, they're never going to have enough mana to pay for that spell. You're just going to pump it up to 7, and then just kind of like stare at them and just be like, hit your OK button and let me scry.
Yeah. So Tron is just making great use of all of these cards. You know, they're great early, but then they also, like you said, they scale in the late game. So a couple other cards that kind of do a lot of work in this deck. The first one's Seagate Oracle, and this one's just, I really like Seagate Oracle. Honestly, I had a really hard time moving away from Seagate Oracle when Augur Bolus was moved into common, the common slot. I just like the fact that like I can take any card. Like I have a sleight of hand attached to my body, whereas the Augur of Bolus is like you can whiff, you can see like all creatures, or you know, I guess if like you see all lands, you're like, at least I got these lands off the top of my deck. So there's that, but I don't know. I just really I like Seagate Oracle.
I remember going on Reddit when Augur of Bolas first came out, and there was like this big debate on, do you keep playing Seagate Oracle? Is Augur of Bolas just better? And obviously, the efficient lists like Blitz and Delver went for that Augur of Bolas because it's one mana less, and they have the instants and sorceries to support it.
Right. Yeah.
And they were like,
that's kind of what I was gonna say.
But what if you're missing land drops in Delver and you really need to get this, you need to get it. Seagate Oracle's better in that spot. And that's what people were using as an argument. And I think that's why Tron is playing it. They do want instants and sorceries, but man, if they make a Seagate Oracle on turn 3 and that finds them their Tron piece, oh, that feels good. You've just kind of put a wall up, and now you're kind of set. I think it's perfect for this deck.
Yeah, I agree too. And I eventually did, after a little bit of nudging, make the switch to Seagate Oracles in my Delver list. And it's 100% correct. Like you said, the Delver list has the instants and sorceries to take advantage of the Augur of Bolas. But the Tron deck, it does have some instants and sorceries, but what it really wants is the versatility that Seagate Oracle offers, where it's like, I don't need Tron pieces. I need interaction. So I'm going to grab any piece of interaction I can. Or, I just need to get more mana. So I'm going to grab whatever land I find. And it really sets the deck up to be in a position of like, this is what I need. And Seagate Oracle will help me go find it, which is perfect for the deck, I think. Plus, well, no, it's the same size as Augur of Bolas, huh?
Yeah.
That card is actually really good. Augur is a good card.
Yeah, you can't really talk about Seagate Oracle without bringing up Augur of Bolas.
I just have like this weird biasm because I used to play the. I'm going to talk about standards, so don't crucify me or turn off your
biasm.
Your thing, but like, I used to play the Restoration Angel Bant deck in Standard. Wolf Run Bant is what it was called. And so basically it's just a big control deck with Sphinx's Revelation and Thragtusk and Restoration Angel and cards like that. And then you'd use your Farseek to go get your one of Stomping Grounds so you could activate Kessig Wolf Run and kill people. But that deck had Augur of Bolas in it. And I just felt like every time I cast Augur of Bolas, I just whiffed. And I was just like, this card sucks. I hate this card. I'd rather have like Elvish Visionary or something.
Yeah,
always get a card. But...
Speaking of Thragtusk, wouldn't that feel good with Core Skyfisher?
Yeah, that would be great. I don't know. Restoration Angel is probably just better.
Well, yeah. So I'm going to move on to...
Let's talk about common cards again.
I'm going to move on to their card advantage engine. And Really, everything else does play into this. I can't tell you how many times I've beat Tron by having them deck themselves or having them go to time. And so these are pretty much the reasons why. They're playing Muldrifters. I don't think there's a better deck to play Muldrifter in the format. It's so easy to cast for them. It helps them find everything. Muldrifter. Pulse of Marasa. You gain absurd amounts of life. It's the perfect stall card. You're not going to get shut off from your combo as long as you have Pulse of Marasa. In fact, it's part of combo pieces. They have either a mix of or one or the other of Forbidden Alchemy and Mystical Teachings. They can pay for that 6-7 mana flashback, easy as pie. Create this great toolbox of a deck. Pretty much be anything that a control deck wants to be.
Yeah, I like all of these cards a lot. A lot. Like Muldrifter, that's like one of the best cards ever, okay? Like, so one of my first experiences with competitive Magic was back in 2008, 2009. And up to that point, I really only played like kitchen table Magic with like my brother and a couple friends. And like, we didn't know what the stack was. And like, you know, all this ridiculous stuff, right? We were Jovens for sure. But I remember like scouring YouTube, and it's somehow I stumbled upon Pro Tour coverage. And this just like opened my world to this whole new thing. And I was just like, there's a Pro Tour for this game? What? And I'm watching Pro Tour Kuala Lumpur that John Finkel won. And this is where I got my love obsession with John Finkel. But it was Lorwyn Draft was the top 8. And so I watched John Finkel draft. And, you know, the highlight of that draft format was Muldrifter. And so I'm sitting there just like, I got to get me some Muldrifters. I got to go buy some Lorwyn packs and get me some Muldrifters. And I built, you know, this blue-white Kithkin deck with like 4 Muldrifters as the top end. It was garbage, but like...
Muldrifter makes decks good. Like, yeah. I can't remember the phrase, but basically it's... Muldrifter has always been making bad decks playable, and just... It can battle everything besides core Skyfisher in the air easily, and it just draws you 2 cards. So it's easy. You can 3-for-1 somebody, no problem.
Yeah, like even if you trade your Muldrifter with another opponent's creature, you got a 3-for-1 in that exchange. You are so far ahead.
And
like
the drawback,
your opponent. I was just gonna say your opponent probably just doesn't even want to ever block Muldrifter unless they have a core Skyfisher or something, because it's just like, if I trade my creature for this Muldrifter, I'm 3 cards down. So you just like, I guess I'll take 2 damage until I can't not take damage anymore.
And there's so many tricks you can do with it, and it's so consistently just there. Even if, like, I was going to say, the drawback of this card is that it costs 5. That's a lot. Most decks can't do anything else usually on the turn that you cast a Muldrifter unless it's super, super late game. But Tron can easily do that on turn 3 or 4, have extra mana.
Yeah, they can easily cast a Muldrifter and then have Prohibit mana up.
Yeah, and
or even you know, exclude mana. Like,
yeah, and you can move that card up into your early game by doing its evoke cost, and you're not cut off from your Muldrifter. You've just activated your Pulse of Marasa. So now you've drawn 2 cards. Now you can gain 6 life. You have your Muldrifter back, and Muldrifter is just gonna peck him for 2. You control him, and you don't even have to do any of your other late game stuff. It's your win con.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of great synergies, like with Muldrifter, like with Pulse of Marasa, the ability for you to use it as a divination on turn 3, or to just play it as a big threat that draws cards on turn 3.
And
we haven't
even gotten to the best part yet.
What's that? Tell me. I can't wait.
You need to get to the next section.
Okay, all right. So these are the end game cards. These are sort of the cards that, and Muldrifter does sort of fit into here, but we felt like it felt better in the card advantage section. But these are the cards that Tron is going to take the game and run away with it. Like a bat out of hell.
Nuh-uh. It's going to run away with it very slowly. And
very slowly at first.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna kind of like, hey, I'm not doing anything. Don't mind me. I'm just chilling. And then all of a sudden, they got your TV and they're out the front door and your wife is screaming and your children are crying and you're just like, what happened? What in the heck? I thought we were having a nice, friendly game. And then they're like, nah, bro, I got Dinrova horror in my deck.
Yeah, I thought I was beating you. I've beat you down every turn for 6 turns. And they're like, nah.
Nah, I just let you have your fun a little bit. So these are the end game cards. So we've got Dinrova horror, Mnemonic Wall, Ghostly Flicker. So this is all sort of this package that ties in with like Pulsa Marasa also and Muldrifter. And so the interaction here is with the Ghostly Flicker to flicker your Mnemonic Wall. And then Mnemonic Wall, when it comes into play, returns the Ghostly Flicker back to your hand. And then you can pair that with any creature you've got to just gain a ridiculous amount of value. And then the Dinrova horror kind of does this thing where it just like locks your opponent out of ever having creatures.
Or
permanence. Permanence. Yeah. Like ever having permanence, and then like eventually like they just don't have a hand.
But Clark,
like they've got
that takes a lot of mana.
Oh shoot. You're right. That's so mana intensive. Good thing we make 8 mana on turn 4. And then the last couple of cards that I kind of have listed are Capsize. This is just something else to sink mana into to sort of lock your opponent down and create kind of just a lock on what they're trying to do. And the last one is Rolling Thunder. It's just kind of like a oops, I win, Bonfire the Damned, miracle your bonfire, stare at Brian Kibler until he just gives up kind of a card.
Yeah, the Rolling Thunder in this deck, you can hold it in your hand, wait until turn, I don't care, you have 10 cards left in your library, and you do them 28. Like, I don't care that you gained that life. Like, you just start adding up how many mana the Tron lands can produce, and it's just a one-shot kill lots of the time. And when it's not, you point it at a creature, or 7, kill all of them, have the option to get it back to your hand.
I remember the first time I lost to Rolling Thunder, I was so pissed off.
What were you playing?
Because I was playing Blue-Black Teachings versus Tron. And I had done a really good job of like, I had some disruption, counter spells, and I had been able to make like a really fast Gurmag Angler. And I thought he was just dead on board. He had like 2 cards in hand, just had flooded out, tons of mana. He was at like 5. I had a Gurmag Angler, a bunch of like removal in my hand, counter spells. I was just like, I'm ready for whatever you do. Like, you're not resolving anything. Or so I thought. Because like my counter spells were like exclude, and I had removal. Like I was covered for whatever he did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he made Rolling Thunder, and I just like stared at like the exclude in my hand, the removal in my hand, and I was just like, count his mana, and I'm like, I guess I'll take 24. All right. I was mad.
Yeah, and it's not like I just love that it's not just you try it once, okay, that didn't work. You have the option to try it over and over again with your stupid Mnemonic Wall combo. Like there's This deck actually, it doesn't go infinite, but it's got a repeatable combo that you can do 3 or 4 times a turn.
Yeah. I mean, once you get to that late game, there's no other deck in the format that can do the big things that the Tron deck is doing. You know, just all the synergies in it tie together so well, and it's so hard to stop it. So
Yeah, it just, the word is inevitability of just, you know that eventually the Tron deck is gonna build too much advantage where eventually they can assemble something that you can't deal with. Eventually they're gonna be able to just cast bigger spells, bounce all your stuff. Like you don't know what's gonna happen, so you really have to go under it, and they just have all of the tools to deal with you going under it.
yeah, yeah. So let's sort of talk about, now that we've kind of gone through the structure of the deck and the cards that make it up, let's talk about the focus of this deck and what its plan A is, and then how it's using these tools to execute that plan.
It's I think its plan A is, it feels like the plan A is beat you down with Muldrifter. It has this other plan of the inevitability plan of bouncing that Dinrova Horror or casting Rolling Thunder, but I think like initially it's just trying to out advantage you and beat you down with Muldrifters in the air.
Okay. That is definitely not what I would have said their plan A was.
I mean, like,
I'll take your word for it. I've never actually played this deck, so like it kind of just, and that makes sense for kind of all the things we talked about earlier with, you know, Muldrifter. Your opponent's never incentivized or excited to block Muldrifter, and so like you can get in some good damage with it. They block it, they're down 3 cards, and then it comes back, and then all of a sudden you're down even more cards, and it just snowballs. It just snowballs out of control with the Muldrifter, and it's really, they don't need to put anything else into killing you. They just play Muldrifter.
That's exactly why I say Muldrifter is the plan A, is because you want to save all of your resources for, you know, if you have to use your plan B. Of course, you're going to run out your mnemonic walls and things like that when you need to get back stuff, but your plan A is just keep casting Muldrifter, draw more cards, grind them out, and if it eventually you're going to be forced to do your other thing, or you're at a point where you know they can't resist you and you can do your broken thing.
Yeah. And this deck also just has a lot of efficient ways to interact early in the game. So it needs to get to this late game, but it kind of skips the mid game and goes straight to its late game. But it has all these great ways to interact in the form of their counter magic, their removal. Seagate Oracle is one of the better ways too. Like, it just gums the ground up, gets you another card. Moment's Peace.
Yeah, I don't feel like we've spent enough time talking about how much Moment's Peace comes into play when you're playing against this deck. In a moment we're gonna talk about how to beat it. I think targeting the Moment's Peace with Flaring Pain is the way most decks try to beat Tron, because Moment's Peace means that, you know, you look at it and a lot of them run 4 copies. You're like, okay, there's 8 turns that I have to attack. Nothing's going to happen, and they've only used up, you know, a small portion of their mana, and then the rest of the time they're working to go get these cards. They can do it much more than that with that pulse, or that what's it called, mnemonic wall combo. Like, it's so annoying just looking at Tron. They're at 6, you have the kill, but can't do anything about it. They're going to cast Moment's Peace for the 14th time.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, we kind of did just just kind of glaze over or skipped over that interaction there of, like, how well they can recur all of these spells, well, that applies to the Moments piece, and they've really just created a lock. Like it's kind of like they've got a green moat,
Yeah,
but
no,
it's better than a moat because it doesn't get blown up by disenchant, and it also stops flyers from attacking.
so I would say in paper, paper and online play against Tron differently because in paper you can be like, well, I know I can't beat Tron now. They're just going off kind of. But the thing about the deck online is it's very complex how they have to fix their mana. They end up casting 4 spells a turn. They cast things out of their graveyard. There's a lot of thinking time. You can beat this deck on the clock pretty easy.
Yeah, it's just like it's weird. And if you're not comfortable playing Magic Online, it's something that takes a long time to get used to. The clock is such a different dynamic on Magic Online than it is in paper. And a lot of times I've used it as a kill condition when I'm playing, blue black teachings. My turns consist of land, go, counter your spell, kill your thing. Their turns consist of play my land, think for a minute, try to resolve a creature, okay, try to go to combat. And I just like win game 1 and then let them clock themselves in game 2. And the opposite is sort of true for Tron. And so that's, I think, why it needs, like, cards like Rolling Thunder really help with that. Where it's just like, I'm going to die here. Good thing I have Rolling Thunder, and I'm just going to keep Rolling Thundering you until it sticks. And that's one way for Tron to beat the clock.
So let's move on to how to beat the Tron deck. So obviously, to be the beatdown deck, be aggressive is the way you want to go into this. Sequence your spells to do the most amount of damage the quickest. You don't need to worry so much about advantage because you're not winning that game. And then there's a point in here that I actually disagree with. And it's that you want to attack their land and land destruction is good. I actually disagree with that because it backfires a lot because they have Ghostly Flicker and Pulse of Marasa, that it just doesn't matter that you've attacked their land. I would say go for their graveyard and make sure they can't cast Moments Piece. Those are the ways you're going to lose because they affect your, well, at least attacking the Moments Piece affects your be aggressive plan. And then if you're grinding, attack their graveyard. Pretty much the whole deck revolves around using your graveyard for some kind of synergy. The Ghostly Flicker combo stops working, their Pulse of Marasa stop working, cuts off half of their Moments Pieces anyway. They've got Forbidden Alchemy Mystical Teachings that you're going to cut off. So I think everyone can play Relic of Progenitus, and you almost always see 2 copies in a sideboard unless unless you're trying to go under really hardcore. You just put those 2 relics in there so that you can grind against Tron. It's almost impossible to grind when they have their graveyard, but it's doable when they don't.
Yeah, and I think I should have been a little more clear on that in our show notes, but like the land destruction and like the other forms of disruption really only work if you have a very fast clock. Like if it's enough that like I'm going to blow up your land and set you back 1 turn, but that 1 turn is enough for me to kill you, and that's how you're interacting, then that's great. But like if you're trying to grind with Tron and like you kill one of their lands, if you don't have a way to capitalize on that tempo, like it doesn't matter. You've actually just set yourself back because you're down a card. They have a way to get that land back in the late game or just play more land, and you're still not progressing your plan A of killing them.
Yeah, and I would say
eventually Tron's just gonna like not care about anything you have anymore. So like really the disruption for them really only applies if you have a very fast clock. Like if you can make turn 1 Delver or something and like disrupt them a bit with counter spells and like really capitalize on the tempo of just like I set them back a turn, but they're not going to have time to do what they need to do anymore because they're dead now. And if you can't do that, like trying to play like 1-for-1 with them, like, oh, I countered your spell, he, they're just like, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care, you know? So like you really need to have a permanent way of attacking them if you're planning on grinding. And I think that you sort of hit it right on the head with the, have something to disrupt the graveyard, have a way to turn off Moment's Peace, have a way to shut off the Ghostly Flicker Mnemonic Wall combo.
And I think the cards that lose value against them are ones that attack their creatures. A lot of people logic their way into being like, oh, they're gonna try to Ghostly Flicker and I can kill their creature, so I don't get Ghostly Flicker locked and they're not gonna do something broken. That doesn't work. Like, I know that they're playing Moment's Peace and you might be able to Galvanic Blast your way to victory at the end of the game. That's a better plan game 1 than it is game 2. Game 2, I would say take those Galvanic Blasts out of your deck, focus on their graveyard, and just go for a fast clock. You have to take something out of your deck, and it is that it's that removal.
Yeah, I think I got to agree with that. But anyway, that was Tron. Do you have anything else you want to touch on before we wrap it up?
Just that the decks do vary since they're toolbox decks greatly. You'll see Doomblades. Sometimes they run Probe. Like, they're all over the place. This toolbox lets them have access to all kinds of weird cards. And those are going to, like, Electrickery sees play in the main deck. You just never know what you're going to get, so kind of don't try to play around everything. Just do your own game plan, and I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think it's also like kind of important to touch on this, but there seem to be 2 different types of this deck, of Tron deck. Like, there's Marasatron, and then there's Dinrovatron that people call. I kind of see them as the same deck, personally, because there are tons of deck lists that just have all those cards in them. But every once in a while, you'll see a deck that's like playing a couple more Dinrova Horrors and not playing Pulsamarasa, or it'll just be playing Pulsamarasa and no Dinrova Horror. Personally, I think it should be playing both in the same deck, and it should just be called Tron. But I don't know. That's just me. I think it's important to note that, though, that just because you see one doesn't mean you're always going to see the other, and it could could just have a completely different dynamic to the deck.
Yeah, and that's not even, like, those are the 2 dominant ones, and I won't even go into ones that play Ulamog's Crusher and things like that, and just they play Pulse of Marasa to get back Ulamog's Crusher and cast Fangren Marauder with a whole bunch of baubles or stars and stuff to gain an absurd amount of life. This deck is old. There's 100 iterations. All of them die to you attacking very, very quickly.
Yeah. So that's Tron. If you want to play this deck, I hope that kind of what we talked about was useful, a good place for you to start and build upon. And if you don't want to play this deck, just remember, have a fast clock and attack the graveyard. Mm-hmm. Don't get Moment's Peace out of the game. Pieced out of the game.
So are you ready to get into the Pauper Challenge breakdown for this week?
Wow, Pauper Challenge. That was Japanese for Pauper Challenge. Yeah, this Pauper Challenge is kind of neat because it's not like last week, which was boring and Delver. This one's got a little bit of variation to it and a few decks that we haven't seen in a while. A deck that I don't know that we've ever seen top 8 challenge.
Definitely not. This has definitely got some spice in it.
Yeah, it's really cool. So let's do it. Let's segue over into Pauper Challenge Breakdown.
Okay.
So I think it's no surprise that in first place we've got trusty old Scred Delver. Never fails to put up the results.
Yeah.
Second place, though, we've got Boros Monarch. We haven't, I don't think, seen Monarch in a few weeks.
Yeah, we have.
Make a top 8. Have we?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe. All right.
It's consistently up there.
I mean, it's good. It's good.
Definitely.
It just it's not one you see every single week. You know, it's hit or miss. I feel like maybe I'm wrong.
You are.
All right, that's fair. I'll be wrong. I'm probably just way out of base here. All right. Third place, we've got Burn. Fourth place, we've got Blue-Black Alchemy. So our fifth place deck is sort of an exciting one. It's a deck that I literally didn't know what it was until 2 seconds ago. And Sean had to explain it to me, and we edited all that out because you guys don't need to hear how stupid I am. But this deck is called Midnight Gond. And so it uses this awesome card called Presence of Gond and Midnight Guard to create an infinite loop and almost like a Splinter Twin effect.
Yes.
It's very cool. It's very much spice. And we'll get into it. Now let's just talk about it now.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about it now. So, Midnight Gond, for those who are not aware, is 2 and a green for an enchantment aura. And it says, enchanted creature has tap, create a 1/1 green elf creature token. So you want to put this on one of your creatures. Maybe you put it on your Midnight Guard, but you can put it on always on your Midnight Guard?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't go infinite unless it's on that Midnight Guard.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. No, you're right. See how dumb I am, guys?
But yeah, the deck is it's a green-white tokens deck.
Tell us what Midnight Guard does.
Oh, Midnight Guard is a 2/3 for 3 that when a creature enters the battlefield, you untap Midnight Guard. So of course when you enchant it, you tap it, you make a creature, you untap it. Repeat.
Yep.
It plays 4 copies of both of the Soul Sisters, Soul's Attendant and Soul Warden. So this sub theme of it's actually the main part of the deck is this tokens deck that's just going to overrun you, and it's going to be these crazy amounts of life. It just plays, Battle Screech, sends Enlistment, and this one's spicy, and I haven't seen this yet. I was kind of expecting it though. It has a splash of red. It of course it plays Commune with the Gods to go get either a creature, the creature you need, or that Presence of God. But it's also playing Faithless Looting, and the new best anthem
Overrun.
effect. Yeah, in
Peasants.
Pauper, I think. Rally the Peasants. Its main color is white, so you can easily cast this and just kill your opponent. Like, just a Rally the Peasants with a Battle Screech, that's 20 damage. You have to flash back both of them, yeah? But...
Right.
That,
yeah, I really like the inclusion of Rally. I mean, I've never really seen a deck list without it. This is the first deck list I've seen. But it makes sense because you kind of are revolving your deck around this very fragile, I'm going to put my aura onto a 3 toughness creature that's going to die to almost any removal spell in the format.
Mm-hmm.
You do have Benevolent Bodyguard to try to protect your combo,
which is great.
but it's still quite fragile.
Yeah.
But this Rally the Peasants gives your deck this sort of almost you don't even need to go for the combo. You can just create a huge mass of tokens and then just kill your opponent with this overrun, this anthem ability. Or, maybe your opponent just taps out and you're just like, wha-pow!
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's coming at you from a lot of angles, and then it can ignore what most decks are doing with the Soul Warden and the Soul's Attendant and just being at 50 life.
I like this deck. I might build this deck. This might be my new favorite deck.
Oh, the mana base is crazy, though. It's playing it's 2 of Survivor's Encampment, which on our last episode we said don't play this card because it produces a colorless mana and you have to tap it and an untapped creature you control, which in this deck is very doable. Your 1/1s aren't doing any way.
Yeah.
Your Soul's Attendant,
Like
your Soul Wardens are just sitting
You're
there.
not doing anything with the Attendants or the Benevolent Bodyguard.
Right.
Like Benevolent Bodyguard, you can tap it for the mana and then still sacrifice it. So
And it's
you have a lot of.
It's playing a 3 of Colony Garden. I think that's, in my opinion, that's a bit much, but I can see it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this mana looks pretty decent. I don't know. Crumbling Vestige is interesting.
Crumbling Vestige is actually very good. Most of the time, you get stuck with that one red card in your hand, and then Crumbling Vestige means you can play it and move on with your life.
Okay, that's reasonable. Cool. Yeah, I really like this deck. It looks fun. It looks just like way fun.
Yeah, it used to be way more prominent than it is now. I can't say for sure what killed it. It might have been Stompy speeding up the format, and then we're slowing down again, and so this might be playable. I just love that it's in the top 8. So, do you want to move on to number 6 and finish this out?
Yeah, let's move on to number 6. All right, number 6 deck is Scred Delver again. I guess we should kind of look at these Scred Delver decks. I don't think there's anything interesting about them.
No.
Off of just first look. They're just the regular old. This one, we're seeing more and more copies of Brainstorm. Like, this list is playing 3 instead of the 2.
They've taken out Lightning Bolt.
The first place deck is playing 4 Lightning Bolt.
Oh, number 6 isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't have any Lightning Bolt. They just have 4 Scred. They're playing 4 main deck Dispel in place of the Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, and obviously it's paid off.
Yeah, I mean, it got them the top 8, but...
Man, their sideboard is nuts, though. I want to talk about that. 4 Swirling Sandstorm, 4 Stormbound Geist, 4 Pyroblast, and 3 Relics.
Yeah, that sort of just looks like a man who knows what he wants.
Yeah, they don't care about affinity at all. So this guy has taken...
Well, Affinity won last week, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Tribe combo.
Oh, Tribe combo.
Affinity wasn't even in last week.
Really? Huh. Never mind. I was going to say, I thought that Affinity had posted some great results, which means that, which usually means that everyone's going to be doubling down on their artifact hate. So I'm not going to play any artifact hate, but I'm going to let all my opponents take care of Affinity for me. But obviously that's not the case if we haven't seen Affinity. I felt like that deck posted results like a few weeks ago. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, we covered the deck last week. There's that.
Maybe that's just what I've just got Affinity on the brain. Oh well, I'm just wrong all over the place.
But yeah, I think this we were talking about last week is your Affinity matchup is as good as your sideboard options are, and I think that their sideboard is more just saying Swirling Sandstorm's the way I deal with that. I'm not going to attack your lands. I don't care to, or maybe I can't afford those Gorilla Shamans, and I respect this. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, I do kind of like the straightforward sideboards. They're just like, I have a plan, and I know what that plan is, and the sideboard really shows that that's the case here. But let's go down to 7th place. We've got Boros Monarch again.
So that's 2.
Pretty straightforward. Both Boros Monarch decks in this top 8 are playing Seeker of the Way. I know that's something that we've discussed. Or no, 2nd place does not have Seeker of the Way. I am a liar. But the 7th place deck has 2 copies of Seeker of the Way.
The diversity is great. I think that's one of the greatest part about Pauper is just the deck lists can be all over the place and still be in the same archetype, and sometimes you just see these great deck lists like Midnight Gond.
Yeah, I do think it's kind of interesting though that people are still just really undecided about Seeker of the Way. You know, is it what they want in their deck? Is he not? And I think that only time will tell ultimately, but It is interesting that no one has found a clear home for him yet.
I just think that's because it's not clear whether he's better. It's not clear whether he's the best thing. It's clear that he's good enough, but whether he's better than the other things you're doing for whatever you take him out, I think it's comparable.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right. So last, but certainly not least, is our 8th place deck. Is it Blitz?
Yeah, and they're not trying to.
Sean?
It is. It is Blitz.
It is.
They're not trying to do anything too fancy. They've just got the 4 Augurs, the 4 Kiln Fiends, the 4 Nivix Cyclops. I know that sometimes you see like the wee Dragonauts or whatever the guy with unblockable and prowess is.
The elusive Spellfist.
Elusive Spellfist, that's what it is. So I
quite like that card.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of people end up playing it, but I think it's, it can be too cute, especially in Is It Blitz?
Is it Blitz?
Are we ready to move on?
Yeah, I think that we've touched on what needs to be touched on, and we kind of skimmed over the Delver, and that's fine because we talk about that every single week. So let's move into the last segment of our show. The What Are We Playing?
What are you playing, Brandon?
I'm playing Scred Delver, yo.
Just trying to be the very best at the deck?
I'm going to be the very best that there ever was. And to beat all the rest, that's my cause.
All right. Well, you butchered the Pokemon intro.
I know, I did. I was kind of changing up the lyrics to help it fit a little better, but I don't know. Maybe it didn't work.
Yeah, are you switching up the cards in your sideboard yet? Or are you just kind of rolling with what you got and just getting better at knowing the interactions?
Kind of just that, the second thing. I have made a few adjustments to the sideboard, like here and there, week by week, like small changes. I still don't own Gorilla Shamans, but I don't know. Honestly, like I feel like the deck has a lot of great ways to deal with the creatures out of Affinity anyway. Like not having Gorilla Shamans makes it harder, obviously, but like I don't know. My deck's full of Screds and Lightning Bolts, and like I can board in a few not Shattering Spree. 2 in a red, destroy an artifact, deal damage to its controller.
Yeah,
that
one continually escapes me. A brutal shattering, shatter face.
I don't think I'll ever remember the name of that card either. Listeners know what it is. You guys are smarter than us.
Smash to smithereens. Sorry.
Smash to smithereens. We were like not even close.
I was.
So anyway, yeah. But yeah, just trying to learn those interactions, and I'm a degenerate at heart. Like, I'm gonna always just try to do what is going to give me the best chance of winning, because my self-worth is based solely on my performance in a children's card game.
I don't think that's true.
Anyway, Sean, what are you playing, man?
All right, so I convinced my girlfriend to play a game of Pauper with me. We played my Bomberman deck against my Corrupt Control deck. I let her play Corrupt Control, and she's been taught how to do the basic things. She doesn't have like practice enough to know like how to sequence perfectly and like how to hold stuff up and stuff like that. But she did beat me because Corrupt Control is just gonna beat that deck almost every time.
Yeah.
But then she was like, I want you to build me a deck. And I was like, okay, we can look online and we can pick out a deck for you. We can look at them together. And she's like, no, I want you to make me a deck that's only women. She's a feminist, and she only wanted women on every card. If it was a spell card and it had a man on it. No dice. So I brewed a deck that only has women. Like, if there's a man on a card, which is Squee, the goblin, I think is the only one.
But he's hugging a woman's legs, so he's like...
Yeah. He's hugging this black woman, so it more than makes up for it. So what I brewed was an angelic renewal Auramancer with like lightning bolt and not Thornbow Archer, Firebrand Archer, like.
And hey, lightning bolt even has a woman on it.
It does, yeah. There's like a little tiny woman, like looking up at the lightning bolt on one of the arts. So
no, she's summoning the lightning bolt.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm the lightning bolt queen.
Yeah, there's a lot of cards with women on them, actually. Actually, I think all of the Umbras have women like floating inside of the animals, which is amazing. So I brewed this deck. They printed a Seal of Fire with a woman on it for like a dual deck, which is great. I had to pay more money for that, but I don't care. Pyroblast is one of the best cards in the format, and I get to play that. Oh my gosh. The deck is actually super fun. I need to refine it still, but I'm definitely going to make a video on that soon.
Yeah, you showed me this deck yesterday, and it was so funny. Like,
it's doing well. I beat Tron.
Yeah, that was what was the funniest
today.
thing.
I beat it on time, but it just kept coming. It has Custody Squire in it. That card's the truth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I beat Burn. I also lost to Burn one game, and then I beat Tron. It's so much fun.
That was what I think was the funniest thing about this deck, is you're like, I brewed an all-women deck for my girlfriend. It only has women cards, and I was expecting, like, just janky McPoop garbage. And you're showing me through this deck, and I'm like, this actually looks like a deck.
Yeah, it looks good.
Like, it looks like it can do stuff. This is great. So, that's what we were playing. That was the show. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you had just as awesome of a time listening to our mouths make words as we had making our mouths make words. Again, if you were a fan of the show, you liked what you heard, if what we said was beneficial to you in any way, go ahead, support us on patreon.com/common knowledge. Anything helps. We appreciate it immensely. If you want to contact the show, ask some questions, leave some comments. I think we left the challenge for you guys last week to insult us in a non-vulgar but creative fashion. You can do that at our email at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. And where can listeners find us if they want to get a hold of you, Sean? Where do we go?
So on Twitter, I'm at Lobbert, Lobbert 8. On YouTube, I'm Lobbert. So anywhere Lobberts are sold, you can find me.
I bought out the Lobberts. They're gone. I bought them out.
Where can we find you?
Cornered the market on Lobberts. If you want a Lobbert, you can find me at my Twitter at bclark_ck. I'll be selling Lobberts.
Bye.
Bye.